today if competition had not brought innovation. We would be a weak society that could be easily destroyed. For this reason, I argue that competition is better than cooperation. Affirmative. My first main point is that competition allows for positive change in the world. One example of this is Martin Luther in 1517. He protested against the Catholic Church because the priests were breaking rules. If he had never competed with the church and he had cooperated with how they were doing things, everything would be the same and the rules would continue to be broken. Another example of this is Martin Luther King Jr. He competed with the government for his and many other people's rights, and he made a massive difference to the country. If he had not competed with the government and he had just cooperated, he may have never given freedom to many people in the country. My second main point is that competition can cause more goods to be produced and invented. During the Industrial Revolution, companies competed with each other, and this led to an increased production of goods and more innovations. This is shown in a quote by Nancy Pearcey. She said, "Competition is always a good thing. It forces us to do our best. A monopoly renders people complacent and satisfied with mediocrity." Also, during the Industrial Revolution, if factories competed, they could discover or invent new ways of doing things that could be much better than before. For example, from 1700 to 1750, the population in Europe stayed about the same. But from 1750, which was when the Industrial Revolution started, to 1850, the population more than doubled from 8.3 million before to about 16.8 million after. This was because the Industrial Revolution led to better food for people and not as many deaths from disease. This shows that competition is a good thing, because when factories competed, they could invent new things that resulted in massive population growth. Now, my opponent may say that competition means war, and that war is never good. But I think competition means more than that. I also think that during war, while there may be sacrifice, there is gain in the means of new discoveries, skills, and knowledge. Overall, competition has brought cultural diffusion, innovation, and increased production of goods. Our world would not be the same without it. Thank you. I now stand ready for cross-examination.
Alright, Maggie, you have 2 minutes to cross-examine Matthew, and that time begins.
Do you agree that to win a competition you need cooperation?
I do in some scenarios.
In competitions between countries, people kill many innocent civilians. Do you think that is okay?
I do not.
In a group project at school, is it better to have a dictatorship or all work together?
I think that sometimes it is good to have one leader. I think that it's good to sometimes have multiple people doing different jobs, because I think that can help the group as a whole.
Would you agree that to win a soccer game you need one outstanding player or a team who is good and knows each other's strengths and works well together?
I think that both scenarios could be very helpful for the team, and yeah.
Some of the most famous inventions, like the light bulb, was created by multiple people. Do you think that they would have been able to create the light bulb without building off each other's ideas?
I think that. Could you restate the question?
Do you think that the people who built off each other's ideas to create the light bulb would have happened if they didn't have each other?
I think that it was helpful to have multiple people, but I'm not sure how this relates to the topic.
Do you think the Wright brothers would have been able to create the plane without each other? Didn't they need each other? Didn't they need to cooperate with each other?
I do think that some cooperation was involved.
Aren't we competing right now?
We are.
Well, didn't we get help from our peers to make a good argument? Isn't that cooperation?
Time. Maggie, you have 3 minutes for your opening statement, and that time begins.
Competition is better than cooperation. I do not support this. As Franklin D. Roosevelt once said, competition has been shown to be a useful tip to a certain point and no further, but cooperation, which is the thing we must strive for today, begins where competition leads off. My first point is competition between countries can lead to death. Many countries and people competing with each other will go to extremes to win. My first piece of evidence is World War I. Imagine, many of the countries were competing with each other for land and to have the biggest and scariest army. Most of the countries' armies doubled in size during the start of the war. Each country started getting the newest weapons to compete with each other. They started using machine guns, poisonous gases, tanks, planes, and submarines. All this competition led to about 17 million people dying during the start of the war. My second piece of evidence is the Industrial Revolution. Many factories were competing with each other trying to produce the best goods in the least amount of time. Many of the factory owners did not care about the well-being of their workers. All they cared about was producing the goods. In 160 years, about 13.5 million tons of iron was produced. After 2 years of working at a factory, a person recorded that 12 dozen kids had died. Many of these factory workers had severe illnesses like Bossy Jaw due to working in the factory for such long hours, and had family members who even passed away because of the harsh conditions. My second point is 2 is better than 1. This means that a group of people will be more efficient and productive than just one person. People can be way more innovative working together. My first piece of evidence is Charter Trails. We all work together to build the highest card tower and highest spaghetti tower. While without each other's ideas and strengths, we would not have been as successful. Having a person to work with keeps you positive when you are frustrated. If you were to be by yourself, you would remain angry and probably give up. My second piece of evidence is alliances. People give support to one another when they're in need. Many countries sign treaties in which each nation involved pledges to defend the other if attacked. During World War I, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy formed an alliance. Germany and Austria-Hungary were to help Italy if attacked. This helped countries who were poor and didn't have enough strong enough army to fight by themselves. My opponent may argue that competition brings innovation. But without cooperation, you can't have innovation. Cooperation will make people's ideas better. 2 people giving one idea will lead to one amazing idea. My opponent may also mention that competition makes our world stronger. But without cooperation, the innovation we have today would not have been possible. People have built off other people's ideas to create some of the most famous inventions. Thank you. I now stand ready for cross-examination.
John, would you like to move on? If you just shut the door. Appreciate it. Okay. You have 2 minutes, Matthew, to cross-examine. Starting now.
Is it true that during the Industrial Revolution, more goods were produced?
Yes.
Were the goods produced, or do you think the goods were produced out of a desire to make, for the companies producing the goods to make more money?
Yes.
If all of the companies wanted to make more money from the same consumers, do you think they were competing?
Yes, but they needed each other. They needed more people. If they didn't have cooperation, they wouldn't have been able to do that.
Cooperation between the different companies?
Yeah, and there's many people who work at a company, and they all need to cooperate with each other, people that work there.
Moving on. Are you aware of the Mimbean challenge that we had?
Yes.
Do you think that the Mimbean challenge could be labeled as a competition?
Yes.
Do you think that the Mimbean challenge encouraged people to use the website more than before?
Yes.
Then if Mimbean is a website for learning, and the competition caused more people to use the website more, then you're saying that competition is better than cooperation because more people were learning because of the increased motivation.
Yeah.
Of the website.
Yes.
Okay. Is it true that if I played a game of soccer, that I would get more exercise?
Yes.
Would you say that soccer is a competitive sport?
No, it's not all competition. You need to cooperate with your teammates.
But if there are 2 teams and both of them want to win, could you label that as competition?
It's not all competition.
Time. Okay, you each have 1 minute to prepare for your closing statement. When you say you're ready, time starts. Thank you for waiting. We're very respectful. Time. Matthew, you will begin with your closing statement. You have 1 minute for that, and Maggie will close with yours. 1 minute, Matthew, begin.
I have argued that competition is better than cooperation. Affirmative. I argue this because, as I said in my opening statement, competition brought increased production and innovation during the Industrial Revolution, as shown by competing factories and historical statistics. I also argue that competition is better than cooperation because competition can lead to countries gaining resources, as shown from the right. My opponent argued that innovations were made solely from cooperation, but I think that to some degree inventions could have been made and people were motivated to make them using from competition because they all wanted to make it and they all wanted to be the person to first make the innovation, for example. My opponent also argued that in sports there's only cooperation, but I think that in sports there is also a lot of competition, and that's...
Maggie, you have 1 minute for your closing statement, and the time is up.
Cooperation is better than competition. This means that working together and finding common ground is going to go way farther than competing and disagreeing with each other. This statement works for small and giant issues in the world. Cooperation also helps people come up with new inventions such as the first light bulb and the first airplane. My opponent argued that the Industrial Revolution was good and a lot of innovations came from it, but people got hurt and were severely injured. Sometimes competition is inevitable, but the best way to compete is through cooperation. Isn't it about time we evolved from a world of competition to a world of cooperation? Thank you.